Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Mumbai Angels Network's Reboot. India is currently in different phases of unlock to overcome these uncertain times and to restart the economy. In this edition of Mumbai Angels Network's Reboot, we are geared to talk about four sectors who have emerged as game changers. Our first session focuses on the sector of online gaming. The session is divided into 40 minutes of panel discussion and 20 minutes of Q&A. One request, please keep your devices on mute to be able to hear our speakers clearly. And also do send in your questions to us during the chat. Our team will curate them and we'll try our best to get them answered by our esteemed panelists. If you wish for a specific panelist to answer your question, do let us know and we'll see what we can do about it. Our panelists for today's session are Abhishek Aggarwal, Managing Director, Trinity Games. Abhishek is an experienced talent manager with a demonstrated history of working in the marketing and advertising history. He is now working towards making esports and gaming a profession for the new India. He is currently the Managing Director, Trinity Gaming India. Laxmi Khanolkar, co-founder and CEO, Apar Games. Laxmi has acted as a catalyst in successfully building Apar Games as India's leading game development company. With more than a decade of work experience, Laxmi is an accomplished professional in the gaming industry and has worked with some of the most renowned clients. Prior to starting Apar Games in May 2007, Laxmi served as producer at Rediff.com for a couple of years. During her career, she has worked across various platforms, including 3D games, online gaming, mobile games, and also has directed corporate films. Our next panelist for today, Manish Agarwal, is the
I
CEO of
sorry.
Nazara Technologies.
There is no need for long introduction. Let's just keep it short.
Sure. Manish has over 18 years of experience, most of it dedicated to the digital industry. In view of his rich experience in the digital space,
I
the
think
game.
that's fine. I think that's fine. Let's move on.
Okay, sure. Our next panelist for today, Ranbeer Hora, founder and MD of Godspeed Games, a gaming industry professional with over 15 years of experience in video game services, gaming production, customer support operations. Ranveer has founded Godspeed Games since 2012 and currently oversees several key business functions, including business, product development, service, and day-to-day operations of the company. The session for today will be moderated by Rajesh Dembla, founder Pacific Gaming and Zoozle. Rajesh is a serial entrepreneur and angel investor with a portfolio of over 40 companies in India, Singapore, and USA, some of which have gone on to be listed on stock exchanges in India and NYSE. Rajesh has always influenced his portfolio companies to focus on revenue generation, and we're quite excited to have him moderate this session. I would like to thank our panelists for their time and for giving us and our audience the opportunity to learn from their experience and insights. Without taking any more time, please keep your devices on mute. Please send in your questions via chat. And over to you, Rajesh.
Thank you, Shivangi, and hello everybody on the panel as well as everybody attending this session. We are talking about gaming today, and I just want to start by rattling out some numbers. And before that, thank you to Mumbai Angels for organizing such a meaningful dialogue on this webinar. The whole world has understood the impact of gaming and what gaming is able to do, both in terms of, revenue generation, as well as, impact for youngsters around the world. 2019 has seen about $152 billion being generated in revenues across the world, purely from gaming industry, with 2.5 billion gamers. Now, the best part is 45% of this $152 billion comes from mobile gamers. About 32% has come from console and about 23% from PC. The good trend that we are seeing is that by 2022, this industry will go from $152 billion to roughly about $200 billion. And out of that, close to $100 billion will come out of mobile gaming, which is about 50%. Okay, now this is the industry that we are talking about. When we talk about India, the numbers are nowhere close to what we see around the globe. In India, we had about $1.5 billion of revenues being generated out of gaming in 2019. But The beauty is that we are expecting this number to grow 4x by 2022. So that means we are looking at about $6 billion coming out of gaming, and these numbers are debatable. These are projections, and various sources will have various projections. So, we all know what this industry is capable of doing. Now, without really wasting too much of time on more numbers, I'll straight away move to the first question, and I would actually like to start with Manish. Manish, if you would like to tell everybody on the webinar, what are your views about the gaming industry? What are the changes that you're seeing? What are the kind of opportunities that you're seeing for game developers as well as investors?
Thanks, Rajesh. Very exciting numbers which you gave. I'm sure a lot of investors would be very jumping off their chair and ready with checks. So let's just hope that's really going to happen. So I think Laxmi, I and many of us have spent a decade or more than a decade on saying that India ka apna time aayega. I think all of us have been saying that for last 13, 15, 10, depending upon whatever, and years which we have forgotten how to count and how many years to count, right? So I think apna time aa gaya is what I would say, right? Were already there. They were all growing. 2-3 things which are to me, as I tell people, that I don't pay salaries on time spent. I say I pay salaries when the time spent converts into monetization. I think that is one of the key important thing on gaming, because India always has a population dividend and you can have large numbers. But for us to, all of us who are running companies, for us to really ensure that we really ensure that A, checks are being given, B, more capital is being available for you to plow back into growth, and to ensure that you are able to satiate the bottomless pit of AWS, Google, and Facebook, because these are the 3 things which take most of your money, right? So if you are able to kind of really deliver anything on that, you need money, right? And money comes when your consumers or monetization starts showing. And when the monetization starts showing, you have a lot of investors who would really see this as a serious business rather than a hobby business. So I think that fundamentally green shoots of consumers' willingness to pay has come in because of 2 reasons. One is your social multiplayer, because has accelerated. The adoption of social multiplayer has accelerated because you are locked down, you don't have anything else to do, and you would be looking at playing these games, because how much will you watch OTT, how much will you watch TV, and you will really need some interactive entertainment. And we are human beings, we like social interaction, and a social multiplayer along with chat gives you the closest proxy to going to somebody's house and really interacting. Or you are really playing Ludo with your family members on the same device, 4 of you are playing a local multiplayer. I think the social multiplayer is here to stay, here to really create a community and create a true bonding, and which will lead to whether collaborative led monetization models or competitive led monetization models, but that's really going to happen, right? Second thing, I think, which is very important, at least I'm seeing in my own family now, a lot of my elders understand what I do. Previously last 15 years, they used to think that I have been chucked out of, I did my MBA, but I wasted my career after moving out from Hindustan Lever, and I've been really have done nothing about it. So now at least they understand A, what I do, B, they appreciate what this could change, and C, there's a lot of empathy that yeah, तुम्हारी job तो बहुत मुश्किल है. So I think that is the second thing. When you have a lot of non-gamers really appreciating on what you can do, you are in a good shape. That will ensure that the stigma around not spending time outside and playing physical games versus playing video games, as it's called, or this being adopted as a career versus really looking for a job interview of some IT services company, I think that is going to change, right? So I think those are the two fundamental things which really have happened in India, which are good because they create both supply and demand, and that is where, uh, because if you have a demand, supply will emerge. If there is a good supply, more demand will happen, and I'm personally a big flag bearer of Indian content will rule the roost. I've always maintained that the Indian TV, which is completely dominated by Indian content, that's what will happen in gaming. It's a matter of time. And the as the quality of supply of talent really improves, more and more player gets perspective. Uh, I think the Indian content for Indians would be the key happening going forward.
True. Thanks, Manish. Thanks for those lovely inputs. And I'm sure with your IPO and $1 billion plus valuation, there are a lot more people, not just your family, who will start understanding what gaming industry or gaming companies are all about. Laxmi, I would like to go on to you, but a slightly different question. See, the average spend per mobile user in India is about close to $15 a year. Uh, Compare that with China, is about $115 per year. Um, what do you see changing in India over the next 2 to 3 years? Do you think the average Indian gamer will start spending more money? And if yes, what is it that gaming developers should do?
Well, I think, in my opinion, I mean, of course, the opinion changes, but what I feel is that what India has is the number of people playing games. So even if they are, maybe the per user revenue might be low, but if you look at it overall revenue, we definitely have potential, I would say. Well, I don't think we would match to the spending power of China users very easily, but we are getting there. I mean, we are seeing the numbers which are coming up, especially in this COVID era, where people are spending a lot more time and hence the money on it. And esports is also changing the perception of parents or towards the gaming, towards playing on the video games versus going out and play. So I'm sure all these factors will play a role and hence increase the revenue, I mean, the ARPU of the ARPUs, basically, yeah, I mean, yeah, this is predominantly is going to increase, but I don't think we would increase it in the so drastically as much as to catch up with China.
Thanks, Laxmi. Abhishek, moving on to you. Do you have any views on what should gaming companies do to get a slightly higher percentage of the wallet share from each gamer?
See, what I believe is running a community of particular game and empowering them. Because see, the thing is, I'm working in this area since last 3.5 years. So, and majority of my time goes into convincing the parents of the prospective gamers that this is a possible career option, right? And see, ultimately, the thing is, if we talk about gamers, they are mostly in the age group of 15 to 21 years of age group, wherein they are not earning anything and they have to be dependent on their father's wallet to spend money. So if we are able to convince their parents that gaming as a career option is a very viable option in nowadays, then only we'll be able to increase the revenue. And that will happen if we are helping community to grow in a manner wherein their parents are also the part of the community, right? For example, if I talk about it, I play games with my colleagues or friends. I think my father should also be a part of that group. Like Manish said, Ludo is a game wherein like almost everybody's aware about that game, right? So we need to create awareness about the other games also, like PUBG or maybe Free Fire or maybe the esport relevant games, or maybe wherein we expect good revenue from the games. So this is how we can able to do it.
Thanks, Abhishek. Ranbeer, what are your thoughts? Do you have any examples that you can share with us about what any specific gaming company has done to get revenue per user much above the $15 average in India?
I mean, there are a few companies already doing this kind of work. But yes, they're not just targeting to the Indian audiences, but they are more targeting towards the global audiences, developing nations like Brazil, Portugal, those places as well. And that's where the spending power of the people are more. The people are more inclined to spend, onto the games. I think that's one area. I mean, we have to create content which is specific to India, but the demand has to be there for the global environment. That is where the revenue is coming from. If you only stick to the Indian market, I think that's something we are still more ad dependent. Like Laxmi said, it's going to change. It's changing, but yeah, it will take time. It won't just change in a day or two. It's gradually reaching the spot where it has to be. So I think the content is the key, but the target audiences has to be broadened.
Awesome, thank you, Ranbeer. Manish, taking on from Ranbeer's point, about going global. A lot of the Indian companies would like to go global especially after what's happening with China now. I'm not going to talk about COVID. We all know what COVID has done for us. But what's happening with China right now, do you think a lot of the Indian gaming companies will start looking outside of India for revenues? And do you have any advice for such gaming companies?
So I think there are a clear fork which comes in every company's thought process. I think as Ranveer said, if you are in India making for India, then you need to be really clear that it's a road which is really tough, and you need to figure out, you have to be in top really 1% percentile of retention and virality for you to really succeed. Because if the IPs are not happening, then the only way you can sustain that business is through very high retention and very high virality, right? And if you are not able to do that, you have to really then either buy your time and do a combination of product and servicing and keep ensuring that your shop continues to run. Now, other way is that you can look at creating content, and where the propensity for IAP is much higher, which is Western markets. And you could really go and create games for there. Now, the crux is that you are trying to compete in the most highly evolved, most mature, competitive, cluttered market. And if you are able to demonstrate an in-app purchase and retention there, that itself requires an amazing amount of game design skills, not just a beautiful game, an aesthetically looking nice game, or a good game mechanics. And that's where you should really go and quickly test with a small cohort. Like in past, we used to test in New Zealand, Australia, Canada, and they are low UA markets. After that, if you're seeing good green shoots, there are enough and more now publishers with whom you can really tie up so that the UA money is kind of taken care of. And you can really not, push the water uphill on multiple fronts. And you can focus on your product retention LTV while somebody else is helping you in funding your UA. Otherwise, what you will do is you will end up figuring out the UA optimization. You will also end up figuring out fundraising. And with fundraising, you will have to go to a lot of people. A small 5-member startup, funding is a full-time job. You can't do all. So focus on really creating, if your market is outside and if you want to look at IAP, a lot of people will come and tell you that the valuation will be muted because you are in a very highly competitive market. You are not number 1, 2, 3. So that's the call which you need to take as a founder on what are you chasing? Are you chasing a PNL, or are you chasing a very high risk valuation game, which could be in India? And then believe in your KPIs. Don't smoke the weed. Really be very, very emotionally detached when you're looking at your KPIs, and be honest to yourself.
Great points. Thanks, Manish. Laxmi, your views on what gaming companies should do looking outside of India for revenues?
Yeah, as Manish rightly said that, when you are going outside India, we are essentially competing with the people who've been into game development for many years before us. And you have the gamers who've been having expectations of much larger than what the gamers that probably India requires. So yes, I mean, it's definitely a lucrative. I mean, how do you see? It's like this. So every game has its own audience, and then when you're designing the game, you are also finalizing, or rather, you should finalize what your monetization strategy is. Now, for an example, if your monetization strategy is ad only, like how happy casual games are, then you need not to go to a very high, like an expensive user, because they are the one who are going to do IAP. You don't need to do that. Now, in that case, you probably have to look at the markets which are of a low CPI. So your revenue is based on your CPI versus the LTV of the user, you know. And when you are going to put that, if that calculation fits, then any market fits for you. So it depends upon what market are you targeting. You assess that with respect to the CPI that you are looking at and the LTV that you are expecting out of the game, or which you are confident of. So what Manish pointed out about game design, this is where it comes, where you need to know what, or rather you need to have an understanding or a judgment of the LTV or the retention of your game is going to be, and work your business model around it. And that's probably the success formula, I would say, if I crack the code.
And easier said than done.
Sorry?
Easier said than done.
Absolutely.
Everyone would agree on that.
I'm sure I do agree on that completely. Yeah. So I'm slightly digressing into another topic. We are looking at gamification happening across domains now, whether it is education, whether it is healthcare, whether it is travel, training, you know. Any trends that you've been able to notice, anything specific that's caught your attention or your views? We can start with Ranbeer and then go on to Abhishek. If you can talk about what are the trends here and what are gaming companies doing to support education, healthcare, travel, etc. Love to hear your thoughts.
I mean, the way I see it in terms of game-based learning, the way I see it, there are two kind of games if we want to divide the games into two different categories. There are pure video games which are more entertainment-based games, and there are some games which are more from the serious, we call it serious games category. Targeting on a specific skill set, targeting on a specific segment of the crowd, and with every game there is something to learn for the player, whether it's kids, whether they're adults playing it. I think every game has to teach something to the masses. When you play a multiplayer, you learn, let's say, communication with other members. There is a coordination effort coming into play. And that is something which even schools and universities are using nowadays. We have seen VR playing a major role in medicine, that front. I think there is, in UK, some of the institutes are using VR for surgery purposes, also training individuals for surgical purposes. There are military training exercises being performed using VR. Simulation exercises are going on. So every segment has been exploring this particular field, let's say, for a while. And we have seen successes mostly from the VR front. And I think that's something even when the WHO also said, that play a part together thing during the COVID era, I think that also added a huge value to it. And now people are also understanding, and even I'll give you a small example of my kids' school. Prior to this, they were like, there has to be a less screen time for the kids. You should not give them mobiles too often and all those things. But nowadays, it's like schools themselves are putting some gamification trends into their curriculum. There is leaderboards, there are achievement tags, there are point system for the kids, there are goodies they are giving online. So, those things are also coming up, and schools are also taking up those things into their curriculum, which is a good part. Even from the gaming industry point of view, it's a very good thing to see. And I think from the investment part also, there is some other segment also where the investors can also look at how to promote the industry.
Interesting. Thanks, Ranbeer. Abhishek, your views on this?
So what I feel is, if I'll talk about my personal examples. So since this lockdown started, me and my family members, we used to meet every weekend or so, like my uncles, my cousins, etc. So so gamification in social distancing is something that we have observed now. So our whole family plays Ludo together every night by connecting over the WhatsApp call with each other, right? Something that we are doing right now. And if I talk about other stuff like gamification in education, etc., I don't come from that background, but that is something is currently being explored by many private schools and colleges. So this is what I think of.
Right, thanks, Abhishek. So before I move on to the next question, which we will start with Manish, it's all about the investor appetite and what do we expect, from investors, both angel investors as well as late stage, probably VC, private equity players doing for the gaming industry. I would just like to mention that we are a completely bootstrapped gaming company, and we intentionally stayed bootstrapped uh, because we are in real money gaming, and then we are able to generate enough cash out of the business. We do not really see a need to raise money at an early stage. There are a lot of gaming companies in India which are looking at raising money. However, because of the ecosystem, because of the regulator and the lack of clarity with the regulation, I don't know how investors are looking at the gaming industry and what kind of gaming companies do they want to back. What is an investor's expectation from a gaming company? Manish, if you could talk about some of those things, it would be helpful.
Sure. I think, Rajesh, this is a time period where if the investor pool was 20 people, it has bloomed to 200 people. So everybody is suddenly wanting to figure out gaming and understand gaming. So a lot of evangelizing around gaming. What is the value chain of gaming? What are the business models in gaming? Why will succeed? What will not succeed? Will happen through all of us, who will be spoken to by different sets of people, right? Each one of us would have received, or number of calls would have received, that must have increased drastically. And a lot of them are about understanding the gaming ecosystem. So I think that's a very positive thing, that if let's say 50 of us or 100 of us are talking to even 7-8 people, even a duplication of 3-4 unique, you're evangelizing or coaching 200, 300, 500 investors which about the gaming industry. So I think this is one thing which will happen. Now the second thing, obviously, like as the numbers really improve, right? As each company has different numbers, will have a different life cycle, different stage of evolution, and hence different funding. You will go to a different set of investors, small and big. But beyond the size of the investor, the core matrices remain same. And you as a founder, if you are able to kind of convince them about the, uh, not about the longevity, but about potential returns, which they can see tangibly, whether in form of an exit or second round of investment or third round investment. I think this is a great time for a gaming company to really to get an investor, right? There can't be a better time, because macro of that gaming is going to be big, and the rocket is going to take off. It is already taken off, and there is enough fear of missing out on the gaming industry per se, right? So I don't see that as an issue. Then it's now boils down to you and your competitive set and your numbers and your own uh, credibility, which really kind of comes into picture, right? But I think this is a great time. Uh, what 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 would happen is that from this wave, right? Because of this massive evangelizing, over next 2-3 years, you will see the advantage of that coming, right? You may not see the entire advantage coming in today, uh, but as you kind of move forward, Now to your question on real money gaming, the real money gaming, it's a mixed bag. There are very polarized set of views of investors. Some investors are absolutely okay with it, and large part of investors get caught up into minutia of skill, chance, central state, legality, GST, all that stuff, right? Uh, uh, so that is where you will find a very binary decision point, saying that I'm okay, I'm not okay. And while if you are kind of a freemium game studio, which is doing advertising model, IAP model, subscription model, or you are doing an esports kind of thing, you may still be in a clean zone, if I may say so, where there are no ifs and buts. The only thing which I need to evaluate is your own KPIs, your own competitive differentiation, or your moat, and then I can figure out whether it is a good bet or not a good bet, right? So I think that extra diligence on the legality part is not happening on the non-RMG bit.
Right, right. Thanks, Manish. Completely agree with your views on that. Anybody, Laxmi, Ranbeer, or Abhishek, if you would like to add anything on this, would love to hear your views on this.
I think Manish has covered most of the points, and that is what I mean. He's the best to comment on all these points. So I think he's laid out perfect pointers with respect to the investment scenario.
Sure, sure. Ranbeer, Abhishek, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, there are new investments also happening every day. I mean, recently there was a recent news about Crazy Labs, putting up a India accelerator, $500,000 for casual games. There are studios from outside India who are wanting to open their studios in India because of the current, segment of games and the kind of games which are coming up from India. It's ever increasing, and like Manish said, it's the right time to see those spikes.
Yes. Yes. So again, the thing is the platforms like the real money gaming platforms or the hyper casual or the casual gaming platforms, we are experiencing good marketing campaigns from these platforms. So I think it is surely doing good, right? So yeah.
All right. Uh, I was recently having a chat. Sorry, I was recently having a chat with a close friend who's an investment banker, and he was telling me that there is going to be more than $500 million of money that is going to come into the top, maybe the top three gaming companies in India within the next 6 months. And I believe there are deals. So it was so encouraging and so refreshing to hear something like that in these times, right? And obviously we have to wait for those announcements to happen. So we don't know who are the investors. We don't know which are the gaming companies. But however, I completely agree with what Manish says. This is a great time for us to, as gaming companies, to look at raising money if at all we are looking at exponential growth and scale. That's what investors come to us for, isn't it? They come to multiply their money. So very close to this topic is the topic of esports. The whole world is talking about esports. There is so much action happening on esports everywhere, and the revenues of esports are expected to grow exponentially to about $100 billion, globally, maybe in the next year or so. That's the numbers that I read from some sources. So, Abhishek, I would like to start with you because you're the esports guy on this panel. So,
So apparently, don't call me the esports guy because esports guys are playing competitions right now. Yeah. So the thing is, what I have seen since last year in esports category. So everyone knows about that. In India, esports is like currently limited to like the couple of games right now, the mobile games that we are into right now. We are playing right now, right? But what I feel is India has a very great potential, and I'll just tell you some data about it. So majority of the esport players, they are not coming from tier 1 cities from India. They are coming from tier 2 or tier 3 cities. And if I talk about the esport talent, the esport talent currently in India is mostly focused towards, like, they have a kind of sense in them that they want to play for India, right? So उस चीज से these guys are triggered a lot. And in India, we have experienced extremely good and very good players right now who are playing PUBG Mobile or Free Fire, and they are also earning a lot right now. But still, we have a very good space or a good vacuum wherein we can have multiple PC games, we can have multiple mobile games to be present in the market. So right now it is the right time wherein we can have good amount of players, good amount of companies investing into esports. But yes, we also have to keep something in mind that everybody in the community should be empowered so that the whole ecosystem grows.
Thanks, Abhishek. Moving to Laxmi, any thoughts on the esports? Anything that you would like to share with the audience, Laxmi?
Well, esports is the least of my experience, so nothing much to say. But as Abhishek rightly said, that a tier 2 is essentially becoming the gamer. And what I would, I think that from the esports perspective, if I have to be really ambitious, then we as Indian developers can create content which can be played. The games can be played as an esports overall, in the gaming space. So I think that's what I think, that none of us are doing it. And whatever and I think the issue probably being is that, of course, funding, because a title which is of a esports worthy would require a great amount of funding. We do see that a lot of mobile esports happening, because I see that India would, even if they are going towards esports, it's predominantly a mobile game based esports, because that's the device that a lot of people have in their at home, and versus globally where the console or the PCs are on forefront. So for an example, the games that are probably there on PC are far more than the games which are on mobile, which come under the category of esportable or esport title, I would call it as. So I think there's definitely a good amount of scope in the content space.
Very true. Thanks, Lakshmi. Just to support some data, I'm saving the last bit for Manish and Ranbeer before we move on to the Q&A. Is that the CAGR expected for mobile gaming is about 11.3%, and for console-based gaming is still at about 9%, which is not too bad, keeping in mind that the speed at which mobile gamers is increasing is insane. And there's really no investment required from a gamer on that front vis-a-vis the consoles. So those are obviously exciting numbers for us. Manish, I'm sure you have a lot to speak about esports, and what are your thoughts and advice to mainly to the gaming companies and also to gamers? You can talk about.
So Rajesh, unfortunately, since I have a portfolio with large enough, so I would have perspective on different things. Yes, you are right. See, esports, I think there is a very interesting point. In India, we have found a new definition of esports, which is not the definition which the world understands. What we have done is contesting around casual games. We are calling it equal to esports, which to me, somebody who has been around for 12-15 years, is very jarring, because the esports, which I understand, is people watching people playing video games, as simple as that. And the people who are playing, they are not playing, they are not paid to play. It's a free to play, and they are, whosoever is playing, they are athletes who are really playing like any other sports. Their physical and their mental fitness is at the supreme level, like any other sports which you would really look at, right? Those are the tenets, and that's why this has been added to Olympics and Asia as a game. But yeah, like every other thing, we have coined a new thing in India, because it is exciting, it is sexy, and it is where dollars are flowing. So we'll also flow with that, right? So I think that's something which I wanted to kind of really highlight. I'm glad that in this forum, at least we are talking about esports, the way esports is understand, because all of us have spent so many basant of our life in the gaming. So thankfully, we don't have such issues. So I tell you, I think as Abhishek said, I believe personally, uh, after cricket, esports will disrupt the sports ecosystem. Um, from the spectators' point of view, this is going to be much bigger. And the fundamental reason is, I believe, any game which crosses minimum 10 million to 12 million DAUs, then only esports is something which you will really see a meaningful number of spectators coming in. Anything below that, you are trying to really be pushing again, or wannabe, because ultimately esports business is a media entertainment business. It's a sports entertainment business. It's a spectator entertainment business. And if you have adequate number of eyeballs, then only this business is going to be really becoming big. And for the eyeballs to become big, it's again a pyramid of professionals, amateur, and enthusiasts. And if you have 100 million plus enthusiasts, then only you have enough eyeballs. And broadly, if you take our attention and all that stuff, 14-15 million DAU is something which is minimal to create that kind of an enthusiast base. And the beauty is that I believe in India, in next 3-4 years, there will be at least, if more than 5, less than 10 games, which will all be upwards of that number, right? And that's where you will have not just one cricket, you will have a combined power of these 5-6 games, which you can harness to really create live stream and on-demand content. And then there is an ecosystem surrounding that, which is about players, which is about streamers, casters, team owners, team managers, game houses. All of that will completely mushroom in this country, because what you're talking about is a 14-year-old to a 25-year-old who is not interested in cricket, and for him, he's playing this competitive game on his mobile all day in, day out, because the mobile is an ubiquitous device. It's already with me. It's 24/7. And that's where I believe this will be bigger than soccer. They'll be bigger than kabaddi. And it will disrupt the sports system. I believe that esports is like two big icebergs, one of sport and other of gaming, colliding together to create something which is disrupting, and that's what is going to happen. And that's what I believe. Whether you are an OTT platform, there'll be massive war among the OTT platforms on esports in this country. There'll be a great amount of live stream on-demand content companies emerging out of it. So full ecosystem. We are really small. We are really very early today, and we are fortunate to really see what it could happen based on what has happened in West. And this is a pure media business, so there is no entry barrier or friction of payment. And I think the audience which is catering to, their brands cannot reach to them through TV. And that is why it is such a great segment of opinion makers, influencers, and independent minds. That's that age group of 14 to 25. I have a 16-year-old, and I know independent mind what it means, right?
Yeah.
And that is the audiences which you would reach to through esports. That's why it will be disruptive.
Yeah, thank you so much, Manish. That's totally, worth the time listening to you, because your views are absolutely bang on. I love the point. I would go one step ahead and say that probably esports will eat into some of the revenues of cricket going further. I don't know if you agree with me or not, but
cricket now, it's like blasphemous. So you don't want a controversy happening and you being dragged around. So it's better. And today is Dada's birthday, so let it be.
Yeah, I agree. So Ranbeer, if you have anything to add, otherwise we'll just move on to the Q&A.
And to be fair, my only take from, I heard what Manish said, but the best thing for me was esports in the most simpler terms is people watching people play. And that's something which has to be the sole meaning of esports, and which is happening. There is a huge digital push nowadays. I mean, मेरे घर पे ही है मेरा छोटा सा बच्चा है, and he spends most of his time watching games on YouTube. People playing games and he's just watching. And the only question I ask is, भाई तुमको मिलता क्या है? खेल ले, मैं तेरे को 10 गेम खरीद के दे देता हूँ, तू खेल ले. But he enjoys that better. And this is something which I have seen in his group. It's going down while they play together. They talk about games. तूने ये गेम देखा क्या? तूने ये गेम प्ले देखा क्या? So they are enjoying this bit more. I think this is also adding a huge potential, and you'll see more viewership added. जो स्पोर्ट्स का हम बात कर रहे हैं, जो क्रिकेट से ऑडियंस इधर जाएगा, वो प्रोबेबली यहीं पे डिवाइड होगा. कितना ज्यादा इसको व्यूअरशिप मिल सकता है ऑन दोस चैनल्स.
Absolutely. जैसे मनीष ने बोला 14 to 25, that audience may not even be interested in watching cricket in future.
Exactly.
I'm a big cricket fan, so let me not come across as somebody who's actually downplaying the importance of cricket. But anyway, thank you so much to the panel for all the points that you shared. And Shivangi, over to you for the Q&A, please.
So let's look at some of the funding questions, because that seems to form the majority. So what I'll do is, some of the questions that are raised is, what is the way forward for new startup founders in these times regarding raising money? Is there a specific set of rules or guidelines that they should follow? Also, the question then arises that should Indian gaming companies and esports companies look at raising capital from India or look at it outside of India? What would really lead to better valuations, and what point is the industry in right now, the Indian gaming industry?
Okay.
Since we are a funding platform, that's our priority question.
I was about to say, Shivangi, probably you're better in a better position to answer many of those, but yeah. So who is this question for? Anybody?
So they've not given it to anybody in particular. So anyone from the panel who would like to take this ahead?
Rajesh, let me take it.
Yeah.
So I think, guys, three things, in my humble opinion, is that if you have got your retention, virality, engagement KPIs, then only think of funding. Nobody is going to fund you before that. And please do not waste your 9 months, 12 months, 18 months in just building the product. Think of a most lovable product, not a viable product. Most of the people really think viable. I think in gaming, we should change that to lovable product, and think of who's your audience, what is the most lovable product, and how soon can you really release it and go and get a reality dose. Because you can keep building it, but you may really figure out in 3 seconds people don't like you. So I think whether you want to look at raising money from India, from outside, from anywhere, you have to really have that. Unfortunately, unlike a lot of markets like Finland and other places where there is a set system, an ecosystem where government really gives you a grant on your idea, PPT, on your credibility of being ex-Rovio, ex-Supercell and all of it. India, we don't have such systems. And that is, again, we are, once we see good successes, good unicorns, quote unquote, whatever they mean, that means, and the gaming companies exits happening, you will see the ecosystem itself supporting and creating that kind of seed capital for people to take more risk. One of the reason I believe in India gaming really struggles because we do not have freedom to fail in gaming. And if you do not have freedom to fail in gaming, you cannot succeed in gaming. I think that is one of the key challenge in India is, and that challenge is remaining, is today, will remain tomorrow, and it will take some time to get sorted. So now, other question was, should we raise from India, should we raise outside? My view is wherever money is coming from, with folded hands, please take it, right? And the last question was valuation would be higher, lower. boss, first you need to figure out what's your KPI. And if your KPIs are really great, then you are in a position to really think of, and if you have a lot of people wooing you, then you can think of the evaluation, because any evaluation comes out of competitive uh, people chasing you. So I think the valuation is determined by the buyer, and the choice to give your equity at that valuation lies with you. So I think there are two very different nuances, which one you should understand. And don't chase valuation, chase KPIs. I think valuation will come.
Thanks, Manish. So the next question is a more generic question to the panel in terms of where are we placed in compared to the global gaming industry, and what is the role that COVID has played for this particular sector? What are the changes that you've seen in the last 3 or 4 months, and what is the outlook going forward?
Okay. Let me start and others can add on, right? So, talking about COVID in the last 4 months, I can talk about our company. We have seen close to a 40% growth in both users as well as in revenues. The time spent, the DAUs is increased. The amount of time players are spending on the platforms is increased. On across all the games that we run poker, we run rummy, and we now also run subscription games across India and few other markets. So what is the other trend that we have seen is the fact that a lot more people are willing to pay. Even on the subscription side, we never expected some of the players to actually go ahead and spend up to 500 rupees, 499, one of the games that we have. We never expected players to actually pick up and start paying for that. We've seen quite a decent number in the last 2 months. Players picking up. So we are seeing a trend after COVID that more and more people are willing to play more games and they're willing to pay for those games. On the question of how do we stack up against gaming companies from the rest of the world, I think Manish has answered it in some way or the other already. The gaming companies from the European side, especially UK and Finland and Netherlands, have been able to raise a lot of money, and they have a global outlook. They're not looking at just European markets. Whereas a lot of the Indian gaming companies have still, been focusing on the India market. So from a game developer, a publisher point of view, I think we have a lot of catch up to do across the world. That's fine. Anyone else, please add on.
Yeah, I would like to add my personal experience from the content side of business, wherein we have experienced almost 30 to 31% growth since last 3 months of COVID era. But what I feel is there are two impacts to it. One is the temporary impact and one is the permanent impact. So wherein if I talk about the temporary impact, this number that we are seeing right now in terms of content and watching and in terms of viewership will see a bit of a correction as we move into the unlock situation, as we move into the as we see many people traveling for work, etc. And if I talk about the permanent situation or the permanent impact, we have basically somehow motivated the elder generation, that is in the age group of more than 25 years of age, motivating towards watching the esports content or the gaming content. So these are the two impacts that we have seen, and let's see how it goes once we get into the 100% unlock situation.
Thanks, Abhishek. Following this is a question which then comes in terms of the businesses that support the gaming industry, which is our independent studios and other such agencies. So there's this specific question on what is the future for AAA design agencies in this particular period. Like, what do you think their prospects are? Is it a survival mode for them, or they will also grow similarly as the industry is growing? Or do you think there'll be a shift, like in terms of seeking companies moving from seeking the highest quality to trying to seek a lower quality? The reason for this question is we had a panel maybe sometime last month when we spoke about online content, and some of the panelists on the that very categorically said that right now the situation is such that some of their rejected content is also being pulled in by channels to view. So is it similar? Like, are you trying? Is this industry also facing something similar, where the quality, like in terms of the AAA quality, etc., would not be that important?
So yeah, I mean, I would like to take that question. Manish, were you answering?
Nah, it's all yours.
Well, okay, when we said AAA, it requires a lot more commitment from the developer standpoint. And when you talk about an indie, you really have to, dedicate yourself if you're not getting, as Manish said. So basically, to get funding, you need to have something proven, either your KPIs or some sort of attraction to be shown, right? So now, whereas an AAA comes, it's a great amount of work and a dedication required in order to generate that kind of content. So indie, it's really a difficult thing to do unless you're that motivated to not get paid for a year or two, and you are ready to do that. So that's one. And well, I wouldn't say that the old. So even if Indian gamer is, if you look at it, or other gaming industry is essentially the gamers play game across all the countries, right? So you are, even if you are making a small game of any kind, you are essentially competing with the world. So when a developer from outside India has the fantastic graphics, of say, let's say a simple Candy Crush, like a game, a match 3 game, I cannot deliver a lower quality game. I have to match up to the quality. I, meaning a developer from India. So it's about the experience that the end user is having. And unless you deliver, there's no chance of retention. Any which ways, we all fight for the retention and the attention span of the gamer. And then it's definitely competitive market. I mean, I hope I've answered what the second part meant.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, you can't refurbish stuff. If you do, you really have to up the quality of refurbished work.
Okay, sure. Thanks, Laxmi. The next question, Manish, is for you, where somebody from the audience wants to understand the scene scenario in terms of the merger and acquisitions in this space. Do you think that there would be a lot of such transactions taking place? How do you think the industry is poised to handle it? Or do you think COVID has expedited the situation, or if anyway the M&A scene was picking up in the gaming segment?
See, unfortunate reality of Indian ecosystem is that there aren't much opportunities for M&A. So I think that to me is the first one. And second is, see, what you could do is that so there are 3 stages of companies. There are companies which are 0 to 1, still trying to find their sweet spot and product market fit, which is where really early stage, or you are kind of pivoting and doing it. And then there are companies which are looking at that IAP, some green shoot has happened, and whether it's India market or abroad market, they are really figuring it piece out. But their retention, engagement, KPIs are looking good. And the third is obviously they have shown traction, they have grown and all of it. So I think if you look at, that's the 3 supply side, and from the demand side, you have local investor and you have global investors, and then you have within that strategic investor and financial investor, right? So if you see, local investors are very, very few, really few. And from the given, as Laxmi was explaining, the mortality rate in gaming is very high, really, really very high. And Rajesh made a very pertinent comment that investors comes to multiply their money. And if the mortality rate is very high, which means their yardstick, their due diligence will be even more higher, and the filtering will be more severe. So your ability to find that kind of a supply pool of money is always very, very choosy, very selective. Now, if you are looking for an M&A, which segment are you going to look at? The first segment, 0 predominantly acqui-hire, Gaming doesn't require too much of money. It's not something which you have too much of capex required. So a lot of companies really want to continue their independence and not look for acqui-hire. It's the second phase of companies which are find some sweet spot. They are looking for growth capital. That is where the investment will flow, in my opinion. And the third piece, the large ones, there are very few, 5, 7, 8 of them, depending upon what stage of their life cycle they are, their investors are, there could be some activity happening there. But I think it's broadly the second cluster, which is where people will try to find the future stars and invest and get them going, uh, because the supply pool of successful companies in India is too small. The valuations are always very rich. I think that is one thing which is very unique to India market.
Thanks, Manish. Rajesh, would you like to make some closing comments? I think we're running out of time.
Yeah.
Sorry, before Rajesh goes in, I saw a question which was, when will Indian game developers see esports tournament?
Sure, we can
Uh,
take it if the panel has the time.
Yeah, I just want to highlight to you guys that we have already started doing cricket tournaments on esports. So we are already doing WCC, which is World Cricket Championship. We have been running it last 18 months in DreamHack and in Northern India Premiership and in other events. And we have seen some great response. We have had commentary around it. We have had streaming happening around that. Since the game has some high quality graphics, the viewership is picking up. And I believe that virtual cricket is going to be really one answer to what Rajesh was saying, that this young audience, 14 to 25, which is not seeing real cricket, they may be hooked to a virtual cricket as we move along from here.
Okay. Interesting.
Thanks, Manish. I'm sure it's a very exciting time for you at Nazara with the World Cricket Championship, and equally exciting for all the players because it's a great opportunity for them. You know, I would just like to close by saying that we are in very, very exciting times. This is especially for the audience. There are many of you who are game developers, many of you who are looking into getting into the gaming business. I think we are in a very early stage of the boom in the gaming industry, especially in India, even in the world. Like I said, about 150 to 170 billion dollars coming out of gaming is really nothing. It looks big, but it's really nothing according to me. Currently, we have about 2.5 billion gamers, as I had said in the beginning. I think this could easily go up to about 4 billion gamers around the world. In a span of less than 3 years from today, we could be having 4 billion gamers. The appetite for gaming is huge. Everybody has got a mobile phone. I'm going to focus more on the mobile gaming aspect. And it's high time we produce a few unicorns. Again, unicorn is a beaten down word. I think we could produce some world-class companies, gaming companies out of India that can go and win audiences from the rest of the world. Africa is a market that is waiting to be explored. Africa has huge appetite for gaming, not just from playing point of view, but even spending. They have their average spends are far greater than India, which is a very surprising thing for a lot of people who don't understand Africa. So I think we are in amazing times right now, and for all the young game developers out there, if you have an idea and if you have the potential to develop it, if you have enough money, friends, family, angel, doesn't matter where, just go out, develop, and go out and publish it. There has never been a better time. So we are very excited. I'm sure everybody on the panel here is in the gaming business because we all love it. We are all excited and we know what the potential is. And Mumbai Angels, the only request would be to encourage a lot more of the angels to please get them to invest in young gaming companies.
Sure, definitely.
Thank you, Shivani.
Thank you, Rajesh. And on behalf of the MA Network, I would like to thank all the panelists, Abhishek, Laxmi, Manish, Ranbeer, And once again, Rajesh, for lending your time and expertise to this session. I also thank the audience for the active involvement and our members for our constant support, and the team at the back end for actually curating this session and helping us get out there week after week. Tune in for our next session on intelligent manufacturing systems, which is on 14 July at 4:30 p.m. IST. Look forward to seeing all of you there. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, guys.